All right, welcome back to another episode of Two Plane Sports. Today, we're going to start a new series here on the channel. We're going to be ranking the position groups for the entire SEC. Where does Oklahoma land at each position group? Are they towards the top? Really, with a lot of inexperience, I think we're probably going to go somewhere towards like the middle. Or are they starting to, or do they have position groups that are still dead last in the conference when you look at it? Because when you think about this transition for Oklahoma and Texas into the SEC, but really for Oklahoma, a lot of people are starting to still drink the Kool-Aid of Oklahoma can't make that transition to the SEC fast enough. There's a lot of doubters. People just seem to forget what Oklahoma is and where and how much Brent Venables has improved this team because he went from having a 6-win season to a 10-win season in year two. While others have had good seasons, I think the SEC gets overblown into how talented it really is sometimes. So we're going to take a dive into it and see where Oklahoma actually ranks. In our opinion, it might be a little biased. We're going to try to keep that out of it. So today we're going to start with quarterbacks. Before we get too far into our rankings, make sure to like, comment, subscribe. Let us know what you think about this little series. Let us know which position group you want to see next, and where you think Oklahoma ranks in starting quarterbacks amongst the SEC as a whole. So let's go ahead and get started. So we took some time before we started recording here, did a little bit of digging, got the names, did a little bit of stat tracking on the guys around the SEC, and we got a list, from 1 to 16. We're going to start from the bottom. We'll alternate. I'll go first on this one, and I don't think it's going to be a surprise for very many. My number 16 and the worst quarterback, in my opinion, in the SEC is Kentucky's new transfer, old 5-star quarterback, previously committed to Oklahoma, Brock Vandergriff. He just hasn't played at all. He committed to Georgia after he left Oklahoma. Or no, he
Yeah,
ended up at Georgia after decommitting from Oklahoma, and then has now seen a walk-on take the starting spot ahead of him, and a younger player take his starting spot ahead of him, and really probably was never going to see the field at Georgia because they since have secured a highly rated 4-star, a 2023 5-star in Jaden Rashada. So that room was getting more and more stacked, and he was becoming less and less important, probably for that coaching staff because that development wasn't there. Brandon, who's your number 16?
I agree with you, Brock Vandergriff. I mean, I think the guy has the tools. Obviously, if you're a 5-star coming out, there's a reason for that. You have some sort of capability to play the game. But I'm just going to reason and kind of agree with you. I mean, I get it when he gets to Georgia. He's a freshman. He's probably not going to start then. But they've had quarterbacks come and go. He's been there for years and years. And I just feel like if he was good enough to play, he would have eventually got the opportunity there. Just never worked out for him. I'm not wishing him bad or anything, but I don't think he's going to be very good at Kentucky.
All right, let's move on to 15. I'll let you take your 15 first.
Yeah, so I went Peyton Thorne there at Auburn. He's a guy that played for them last year. Wasn't great. Wasn't he's okay. I think he threw like 16 touchdowns, 10 interceptions, but he's got this will be year or another year down as a starter for him. I imagine he'll improve a little bit. And I'm just going to go Peyton Thorne.
So my 15 is Taylor Green, previously from Boise State last year. Threw for 1,700 yards, 11 touchdowns, 9 interceptions. Decent on the ground. Had his totals tallied up here. Last year he had 9 on the ground, 9 touchdowns on the ground for 436 yards. Really, his best year was 2022. Kind of took a step back in 2023. We'll see if he can do any better going into his new school at. I totally blanked where he's at now. At Arkansas. Yep, Arkansas. With a new coach, we'll see
Yeah,
how it ends up there for him. I didn't. I for a second, I knew in my head it was Arkansas, but I didn't want to say the wrong answer. But yeah, Arkansas will have a new quarterback there with a new head coach, a lot of new in Arkansas. I think really the his saving grace is the fact that Luke Haas will more than likely be back pretty early on, if not already, um, back and ready to play in game one. And he was a weapon last year for him until he got hurt. I really think he could be that Brock Bowers type tight end. Uh, but we'll see. Taylor, but in my rankings, Taylor Green is 15 in the SEC. 14 for me is Peyton Thorne. Basically, same argument as Brandon. The only reason I have him one higher is because he has played there at Auburn. He's now in his second year. They loaded up. They've been recruiting at a high level now with Coach Freeze. That'd be his second year with Freeze as his head coach. So the expectation is he at least improves. Is he going to take a huge leap from going on an offense that seemed to not be able to move the ball at all through the air to one of the better passing offenses in the SEC? Probably not. But he at least won't be the worst quarterback in the SEC, in my opinion.
Yeah, so my 14, I'm going to go Taylor Green. I think there's a lot of similarities there with KJ Jefferson. They're kind of transferring over for him switching from Boise State to Arkansas here. I think I agree that Luke Haas is pretty good. I'm not ready to call him Brock Bowers yet or on that trajectory, but I mean he's a quality tight end. I think having Bobby Petrino, say what you want about him, it's kind of a head case, but I think the guy knows offense a little bit in college football. I think having him there will help. This is a guy that completed 60% of his passes at Boise State. Dual threat quarterback. He's gonna have some decent weapons at Arkansas. I like Petrino over there as the offensive coordinator for them. He can be decent.
Reed, then who do you have as your 13?
Lenore Sellers, South Carolina. This is fun. I think Lenore Sellers is he rocks the rec specs. We talked about that, before we start recording. I think that automatically is going to help him, play the game a little bit. But this is another dude he's another big body, a big body kind of dual threat quarterback out there for South Carolina. I think they've got. I'm not too familiar with their weapons, but I mean it's probably not bad. I'm a big fan of Shane Beamer. I like him as a coach. I think he did a nice job with Spencer Rattler. I expect them to kind of continue that with Lenore Sellers here.
I also have Lenore Sellers. Similar reasons, but I think he also comes into the season starting with a pretty comfortable idea that he's going to be the starting quarterback for the Gamecocks. Last year, he did get to play a little bit, completed all four of his passes that he attempted for 86 yards, scored 2 touchdowns, and then he ran the ball pretty well as well. He ended up getting a total of crap. Where I keep losing these stats. Oh, he came out with. God damn it. He came out with 52 yards and a touchdown. So decent runner too. I think the fact that he is going in pretty comfortable and no one's really challenging him, as of what's being reported right now as a starting quarterback for Shane Beamer, has to make it easier for him to actually be the leader, learn. It's a second year there, so you would expect him to have an understanding of the playbook. I think the only reason he's not higher up in my list is because he's someone that still has to do a lot of proving proving people wrong, including myself, because we'll talk about guys further down the list that are in pretty similar positions as him, but they came out of high school, highly sought after, or seen as a little bit more or less raw than Lenoris is, and if he can put something together this season and help South Carolina to like 7-8 wins, I think he has a really bright future ahead of him.
No, if he can win 8 games, I think he'll. Yeah, I'd agree. I think he'd be pretty set.
Yeah. 12 is Blake Shapen. This was a surprise to us, and it's probably because we're not really looking at everyone's transfer portal activity, but he's going to be the projected starting quarterback for Jeff Lebby in Mississippi State. Um, in my opinion, he upgraded in jobs or schools he's going to school to be playing at, going from Baylor to Mississippi State. Baylor, when I would watch him, seemed like they'd really take the ball out of his hands in high pressure situations. They really tried to run the ball. They were a good running team, but they didn't trust him too much. Is that because he's not super talented, or just that's the way that the offensive coordinator decided to call the game. Baylor fans are probably no better than I would in that situation, but going to Mississippi State, now he has an offensive coordinator and head coach who loves passing the ball. That is where he wants his offense to thrive. And if he can't be at least okay in this offense and with Jeff Lebby, then they've really got a problem because they're gonna need to hope they find a really good starting quarterback in next year's portal, or they have some young guy behind him that's gonna take his spot halfway through the season.
Yeah, so my 12, I have Garrett Nussmeier there at LSU. I think he could have been higher up on my list if he didn't just lose Brian Thomas, Malik Neighbors. He's losing two of their best players that they had on offense last season. I think this is a guy that has the size, the arm talent, the capabilities to get it done. I just don't know how great his weapons are going to be there year one. He's also going to be a first-year starter out there at LSU, so I'm sure he'll have some some mistakes and stuff like that. But I think he has the talent. Just kind of the lack of weapons and stuff surrounding him. I'm putting him at 12.
What about your number 11?
Oh, is that where we're at?
Yep.
Okay.
Oh, we're
So,
next. Yeah. So go ahead and take your number 11 next. Sorry.
okay, yeah. For 11, I went Diego Pavia. This is a dude, came from New Mexico State, put up numbers there. He had like 4,000 yards of total offense, 30-something touchdowns, both on the ground and passing. So he's a dual threat kid. But similar for him, I think he's probably a pretty decent football player. At New Mexico State, granted the level of competition is not great, but I mean he's killing it out there. So for him, what sucks is he's going from New Mexico State to undoubtedly the worst team in the SEC, where he's probably going to be harassed, and I'm sure the offensive line is not great in Vanderbilt. He's going to have to make a lot of plays on his own, but talented kid on the stat sheet. Just bad situation for him.
Yeah. My next one is Garrett Nussmeier for pretty similar reasoning as you put him at 12. Could have definitely been higher on the list. He was a pretty well ranked kid coming out of high school, 4-star, top 150 player in his class out of Flower Mound, Texas. It is just the lack of experience at the wide receiver position and really the offensive weapons. There's a lot left, a lot of to be replaced. I'm sure Coach Kelly has plenty of talent that he's recruited there, but it's a lot of unproven talent. And
Mm-hmm.
Garrett Nussmeier is also unproven. So it's a lot of question marks around that offense, really, and can they put it together in 2024? All right, so moving on to number 10. I've got Diego Pavia there. The reason I have him over Garrett is because of the stats he put up at New Mexico State. Oh, in the air, threw for 2,973 yards, 26 touchdowns, 9 interceptions, and then dual threat. Ran it 177 times, 928 yards, and 7 touchdowns. So the dude, and I said this to Brandon, probably is going to have a lot of the same criticisms as Dylan Gabriel did going from UCF to Oklahoma when he made that transfer. And Brandon made a point like it, yeah, those doubts were there for Dylan, but UCF to Oklahoma is a different jump than New Mexico to Vandy. And that probably is true to an extent, but it's going from New Mexico State, who's a pretty good team in their conference, to Vanderbilt, who is the forgotten ugly stepchild of the SEC. So while it is going to be a place where he might get a little bit more attention, I think where he's going to benefit is if he puts up a good statistical year. A team that needs a quarterback next year will be going after him. And one that comes to mind pretty quickly, Missouri. If he can put a good season together this year, he can hit the transfer portal, and Brady Cook for Missouri is going to be leaving after this year. And they'll need a quarterback with plenty of talent coming in on their offensive side of the ball. He might be a prime portal target for them going into the 2025 offseason. Brandon, who is your number 10?
10, I went Blake Shapen. I think the guy was decent at Baylor. He's got the arm strength. He's, a little erratic at times, makes some questionable decisions, but having Jeff Lebby there is going to help him tremendously. Jeff Lebby is, some of the dumb stuff that we saw, for the most part, is a pretty good guy at developing quarterbacks, or at least helping them put up numbers up. Dylan Gabriel thrived in the offense. Blake Shapen's a guy of similar stature. He's not the biggest guy in the world, but he can run a little bit. He's got the arm strength. I think having Jeff Levy there running that kind of system, if he can get it down, there's a lot of quarterback friendly throws there, and Blake Shapen should be able to put up some decent numbers at Mississippi State.
Definitely. Let's move on to number 9. Who'd you have at number 9?
Graham Mertz over there at Florida. And he's played a lot of years of college football now. Started out, we played at Wisconsin, and is one that I remember at least. He's just an experienced guy. Florida's got some weapons. I think he'll be serviceable. I think he's going to be an average middle of the road quarterback. So I have him here at 9. He's not bad. He's not great. He's going to get the job done. He's going to be efficient. He's not going to win you a championship or anything, but he's not going to play poorly. I think he's a safe pick. I think that's why I'm rocking him at 9.
Yep. My number 9 is Connor Wegman out of A&M. Last year, he only got to play 4 games because he ended up suffering a foot injury that took him out for the rest of the season. But before he got hurt, he was completing 69% of his passes. It ended up throwing for 979 yards, 8 touchdowns, 2 picks through 4 games. That's not bad at all. I would take that any day of the week. And he did lose probably his biggest target, and Evan Stewart to the portal. But you also got a culture change. You no longer have Coach Fisher there, which, I'm sure some A&M fans probably feel differently than this, but it seemed like he was starting to be not the best person for that situation. It was a lot of when you look at recruiting, at least alone, it was a lot about the NIL and not about what A&M football was about. And while I'm not a big A&M fan, I'm sure there's probably A&M fans and alumni that maybe would agree with that. And basically similar to Oklahoma, under Lincoln Riley, it wasn't about the Oklahoma brand anymore. It became about Lincoln Riley and how great of an offense he put together. The defense kind of took aside, was put to the side and never really taken care of. Now with Coach Elko, I'm sure A&M fans are thinking that this is the guy that's going to help bring that A&M culture back, whatever that is to them, and try to make a more balanced football team. And hopefully Connor Wegman can be the guy to help bring them and that offense back to some relevancy, because it was so bad. They were terrible. But he himself as a player was not bad. So that's why I have him at 9. Decent situation for him. Moving on to number 8, I've got Tennessee freshman Nico Imaleva. He was a 5-star quarterback in the 2023 class with Coach Heupel. Sky's the limit for this guy. He's super talented. Whenever we were talking about that recruiting class that year, I had him and Jackson as like the 1A, 1B. Really, it was about who you wanted to favor that day or that week or that month. Like, those kids are extremely talented and are going to have very successful college careers. But this is probably where the bias took a little bit of effect on me. I put Nico a little lower on the list, and I have Jackson. Brandon.
I agree with you on 8 here. I think Nico, for the same reasons. I think everybody was super excited about him coming out. He's a guy that has all the tools in the world. 5-star quarterback, number 1 on a lot of recruiting sites. Has all the skills. Just hasn't played yet. So I kind of wanted to make it a point to put him at 8 because I don't know how it's going to go. I mean, he has the tools, but we see people that are, extremely talented. And they don't always hit. Sometimes they do hit. So I wanted to put him at 8 for sure because, it can go either way, but I think he'll be pretty solid.
All right, moving on to number 7. Who do you have at 7?
7, I have Connor Wegman. I think, similar to what you're saying, I think I'm putting a little more stock into those numbers than you did. Because, the A&M offense wasn't great last year, but he was solid. To complete almost 70% of your passes, 8 touchdowns, almost 1,000 yards in 4 games. That's very efficient. I think the coaching change is going to be something that will help him. I think, that guy did a pretty good job with Riley Leonard over there at Duke. I know he's a defensive guy, but I'm sure he brought some people on staff that will run a similar system, and I'm sure he'll be efficient over there at A&M. I mean, I don't hope he kills it or anything, but I mean, I can't stand A&M, but I don't think he's bad.
Definitely. My number 7 is our QB1, Jackson Arnold. basically for similar reasons. That's what similar reasons as why I have Nico at 8. That's why I mentioned my bias probably took effect here. But I think Jackson's got the perfect situation. Look at the wide receiver room, extremely talented. Just with the addition of Dion, kind of brings a different dynamic to that room. Andrell coming back hopefully by midseason, 100% healthy and confident in his abilities would be huge for him. You saw Nick Anderson, Jade Gibson, Jalil Farouk, Jaquez Petaway, who came in with him in the 2023 class. I mean, you've got a lot of weapons there. Really, the biggest question mark is who's going to be his tight end, but when you look at the wide receivers, running backs, the offensive line, while it's full of transfers, seems to be taking its shape of its own. I think Jackson Arnold, the only reason he's at 7 for me is because he is unproven. You don't really know what you're going to get. If you take the bits and pieces that we saw of him last year. He has a great arm, can make plays on his feet, but made those freshman mistakes where he was throwing the ball where he shouldn't have. And a lot of people are going to point to the Arizona bowl game as the main examples there. Through some questionable passes, made questionable decisions, but with Coach Luttrell, it's really just a matter of prove it. Can you be the quarterback that we all expect you to be? I think he can, but you still have to show it to be higher up in the rankings. Moving on to number 6, I put Graham Mertz there, basically for similar reasons, and the reason he's higher than both of those freshmen that I had at 7 and 8 is because he is proven. You know what you're going to get. He's not going to be the sole. He's not going to be really the reason that the team loses the game. I'm sure Billy Napier will find other reasons to lose games for Florida, but Graham Mertz will not be that reason for him. Last year, he ended up having a pretty decent year, throwing for 2,900 yards, 20 touchdowns, 3 picks. So the dude doesn't really turn the ball over. And that's what you need out of a quarterback. At the very least, at any level of football, don't be the one to force the mistakes and cause our team to be in a bad position. He's not that reason. The only thing I could see him kind of having to struggle with is if Florida starts to look like they're falling behind a bit, and fans have DJ Lagway there to root for and hope to see. And at some point, Billy Napier really has nothing to lose, and you might as well throw him out there and see if he can save your job and try to survive for one more season. But I think Graham Mertz can be a good quarterback this year for Florida.
Yeah. So in my 6, I went Jackson Arnold. I think I've talked about it on the show a couple of times. I think this receiving core that he has around him, running back room, the weapons that he has around him is the best we've had since Baker Mayfield in 2017. I have a lot of faith in this receiving group. I have a lot of faith in the running backs. I think the tight ends will be fine. I think they'll be a lot more involved now with Joe John kind of helping out with Seth Luttrell. I think they'll try to make it a priority to get those guys more involved. For me, it comes down to if that offensive line can protect Jackson Arnold. I think he has the tools. I do agree he's going to make some freshman mistakes, and he did it in the Arizona bowl game. He's coming in year 1. This is his first year starting. I think we're going to see sometimes where he trusts his arm a little too much and tries to fit into a window, and some bad things happen. But I mean, for the most part, I mean, he's got everything you want in a quarterback. He's got the size, he's got the arm strength, he can run, like you said. There's a whole lot to love about Jackson Arnold. If this offensive line can protect, I wouldn't be surprised if Jackson Arnold ends up being a top 3 quarterback this year.
Yep, definitely. Moving on to number 5, who do you have at 5?
Brady Cook. I think he was good in Missouri last year. I think Missouri. We talk about this all the time before off recording and stuff. But Missouri is quickly moving up my list of most hated teams in the country. So I'm not necessarily pulling for his success. I don't want him to get hurt or anything, but I hope Missouri loses every game. But Brady Cook he's good. I mean, they won 11 games last year, a Cotton Bowl victory over Ohio State. Luther Burden's, I think, one of the best receivers in the country. He's got some familiarity there. He's going to be pretty solid.
Definitely. My number 5 is Jalen Milroe. And maybe to some people that will be low on the list of SEC quarterbacks, but looking at a situation, brand new head coach, new offensive system again, lost many, if not all, of his weapons, so he gets to readjust to younger talent on the outside. And last year, he didn't have that job locked up until like game 4 of the season, until they were almost going to lose to South Florida. It took a minute for him to get that spot. I don't think that Kalen DeBoer is going to take that from him. If anything, he's going to try to push him and kind of make him show to the world that he should be quarterback one for Alabama. But there's also some challenges that he's going to have to face outside of just people doubting him. It's you got to adjust to new weapons. It is not Nick Saban Alabama. I don't think that when you look at this Alabama team, you that same attraction, fear, whatever you want to call it, is there. Like, I don't know, Kalen DeBoer led Alabama does not have the same. What word am I don't want to say fear, but it just doesn't hit the same as a Nick Saban led Alabama team. Like, you don't know what this Kalen DeBoer Alabama team is going to be. They could be, just a good SEC team, 10 wins, 9 wins, and they've still got some building to do. Year one of him, so you're not going to hate it, but can he be the guy that helped them be the Alabama that we're used to, 11 wins, pushing for an undefeated season, getting him into a really high spot in the college football playoffs. So we'll see what happens there, but I have him at 5. At number 4, I have Jackson Dart, 3-year starter for Lane Kiffin. That's what every head coach, every offensive coordinator would love to have, a guy that sticks there for many, many years. It's kind of having like Ole Miss's own version of Baker Mayfield in a way, maybe not with the same personality and antics, but someone that seems to love the university, sticking there until he's graduating and trying to maximize his time at Ole Miss before moving on to the NFL. Because coming out of USC when he hit the transfer portal, he was a guy that Oklahoma really wanted. And basically, the reason that we ended up with Dylan Gabriel is because Jackson Dart decided to go to Ole Miss. And while it seems to be working out for him, it definitely still worked out for Oklahoma. But Jackson Dart is in a position now with the team that they have at Ole Miss where they see that school as someone that can be competing for the national championship, not just a spot in the college football playoffs. After the moves they've made in the transfer portal, having the returning quarterback, now a third-year starter, he's in a spot where not only is our expectations high, but the pressure's high. Because if they are the Ole Miss that we're all kind of used to, where they beat up the teams they should beat up, but they never show up against teams that they're underdogs against. Like, this is the year where they have to prove it. They have to prove that wrong and kind of change that narrative, especially for Kiffin, because he's yet to get over that hump. He's kind of in that Kirby Smart role from before his national championship days.
Yeah, I also have Jackson Dart at 4. I mean, a lot of the same reasons. Him coming back for year 3 under Lane Kiffin. Lane Kiffin's a offensive guru. He's kind of a fun guy. I think I like Lane Kiffin. Very familiar with the offense. He's been good at Ole Miss for 2 seasons now. I expect him to continue to keep that going. And 4 for me is almost that same reason. This Ole Miss team is projected to be really, really damn good. And Jackson Dart is going to be at the forefront of that, at the helm of that. They're going to go and win and lose with him. He's going to be solid. I think 4 is a really good spot for Jackson Dart here.
All right, moving on to number 3. Who do you got at 3?
So I went Jalen Milroe, and this is where I'm going to disagree with you. I agree. Overall, that Alabama is less intimidating without Nick Saban. He's gone finally. We don't feel like we can. It's time now. With Nick Saban gone, the rest of the SEC has to be pretty excited. But I think Kalen DeBoer is actually going to help him more than Nick Saban would have. Kalen DeBoer did a hell of a job with Michael Penix there. And granted, I think Michael Penix is just a hell of a talent. But Jalen DeBoer is a guy that runs an offense the way he wants to do it, and he knows what he's doing. Jalen Milroe is a guy that I think if he can be more consistent, because there are weeks where he looks like the best player in college football, and then there are weeks where he's questionable and kind of all over the place. But I think Kalen DeBoer is a guy that's going to help him kind of take a next step there, and I think he's going to be pretty solid.
Fair enough. And he kind of has a bit of a Jalen Hurts vibe to him right now. He got to stick at Alabama, but he is switching from Nick Saban and a more defensive head coach to Kalen DeBoer, who is offense is a priority to him, and someone that's coached up quarterbacks to be proven winners and highly touted draft picks in the NFL. So I see where you're coming from there. My number 3 is Brady Cook. Basically for similar reasons, but I think it's higher for me because he has that familiarity with the offense. Really, the biggest loss they had that's notable in my head is their running back, Cody Schrader. But they're bringing back, in my opinion, the best wide receiver in college football right now in Luther Burden. They brought back Theo Weiss. He ended up sticking for another year. So you've got your two best targets there. This Mizzou offense was hard to stop, especially at home. So they're going to be hard to beat at home. The opposing defense is going to have their hands full whenever they visit. So I've got Cook there, not so much for his specific talent, but the situation he's in. He's, in my opinion, in a prime spot to be a top three quarterback in the SEC this year. Moving on to number two, I've got Carson Beck. He's
He's
now
now.
a national champion in a position where he can show that he isn't just a product of the system and the school that he's at, but he gets to prove that he can actually be a Heisman finalist and a top quarterback in the country, because the biggest thing he's got against him, similar to his predecessor in Stetson Bennett, is product of the system. The weapons around him were really good, and Lad McConkey and Brock Bowers. Now both of them are gone. They're gonna have to do a little bit of replacing, and he gets to show off if he is that guy or not for Georgia.
Yeah,
Brandon?
no, I mean, I've got him pretty high. My two, and it sucks to do it, but I've got Quinn Ewers there. He's a guy that I think Texas lost a lot of production at that receiver tight end. They lost both Xavier Worthy, they lost Adonai Mitchell, they lost the tight end. I can't even think of his name right now, but he's gone. So they're replacing a lot there, but they brought in some pretty good dudes. They brought in Isaiah Bond from Alabama. I think Quinn Ewers is coming off a hell of a year where he led Texas to a playoff. Um, they were a tough team last year, but I mean, I can see this going bad for him in a way, because it's there's so many similarities with Quinn Ewers right now to what Spencer Rattler had. To where Spencer Rattler was coming off of a pretty solid season in 2020. He was the Heisman favorite. Oklahoma was a national title favorite. Year didn't start off great. Caleb Williams behind him. Fans are booing Spencer Rattler. Caleb Williams comes in. The rest is history. Yeah, with Quinn, I think he's good. I think he's going to be really good. But the thing with him is there's a 5-star back there named Arch Manning that if he's not playing up to whatever their standard is or not looking great, there's going to be some fans who could be screaming for some Arch time.
Yeah, definitely. And moving on to number one, I think you can all deduce who we have. But Brandon, who's your number one?
So number one, I am going with the Georgia. Carson Beck is a kid that I think no matter where you look right now, he's a Heisman favorite or number two on a lot of people's lists. He put up a hell of a season for Georgia last year. Georgia just kind of comes in and reloads instead of rebuilds. They're always going to be tough. I think they're the top team in the SEC, or at least in my opinion, going into the season until otherwise proven. I know they didn't win it last year, but I'm picking Georgia as right now the best team in the SEC. They're going to keep it rolling. Carson Beck is going to be putting up some good numbers. Georgia's going to be a tough out.
Yep. And then my number one is Quinn Ewers. I do agree. A lot of similarities in his situation right now to Spencer Rattler's back a few years ago with Oklahoma. I think the biggest difference in what's working in Quinn's favor is his head coach has been very outspoken about it's Quinn's team, and then Arch will follow him. So Texas fans will probably have a little bit different approach to this situation. They know what Quinn is, and they probably just hope that he can be better than what they've seen. He can be good, but he still makes mistakes. We've seen it. He's not perfect in any way, but he's a very good quarterback. And with Sark and what they've brought in at the with the offensive weapons, they still have a very talented offensive line that helps them a ton. A lot of third year guys coming back. A guy that's projected to be the number one tackle in the 2025 draft in Calvin Banks. So you've got a lot of really good talent there protecting him. And then you have, like you said, Isaiah Bond transferring over from Alabama, Jonte Cook, the 5-star in the 2023 class that many Oklahoma fans are familiar with, since Oklahoma was his dream school until it somehow wasn't. And he ended up going to the swimming trophies at Texas. Whatever the case may be, I think Quinn Ewers is in the perfect spot to be the number one quarterback in the SEC, potentially the number one quarterback in the country, a Heisman winner, and if he plays his cards right, might even be the number one pick in the NFL draft, depending on how his season goes. I hope they don't win a national championship. For him as an individual, he's in a prime spot to help Texas get out of the slump of when they get hyped up, they end up being the Dallas Cowboys of college football. And
I
this is
hope that.
kind of the position they're in.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, I agree. I hope they suck, but yeah, it's a fun list. I think we put together a pretty solid list. I'm curious to see what everybody thinks or what their list is. I mean, all this being said, I think Jackson Arnold again. I think he has the talent and the tools around him. If that offensive line can protect, he could. I wouldn't be shocked if he was up the best numbers in the SEC next year. I think there's a real possibility he does it. I hope he does it. Obviously, as an Oklahoma fan, but yeah, that's. I think my end of video challenge is where do you guys have Jackson Arnold in this mix? I think you had him 7. I have him 6. I think it's a pretty fair spot for year one, but we'll see.
Yeah, and another end of video, and would love to see what other people think is who can make the biggest jump from where they're at in our current list or in your current list to a top spot in the SEC or in the country, because a guy like Connor Wegman didn't get to play very much last year, and I have him at 9. You have him at 7, but if he can stay on healthy, he might be able to be a top 3 quarterback in the SEC. Or Lenore Sellers, can he make a jump and be consistent for South Carolina? Like, there's guys with potential to make the jump. Jackson Arnold and Nico could be up there in top 3 quarterbacks when it's all said and done by the end of the regular season. Like, there's a lot of guys that can make huge jumps here, and prove that they are the future of their programs for a couple years. But I had fun. We're going to have fun making this series. We've got a lot of position groups left. Let us know what you think about this first video in this series that we're starting. Like, comment, subscribe, turn on the notification bell, leave a comment to those end of video challenges, share the video, follow us on social media, follow us on Spotify and Apple Music. We're on there as well. Thank you all for watching and listening, and we will see you next time.